We made our triumphant return to Halas Hall this week, which was super fun. It was our first time doing a post-practice press conference with Matt Eberflus in person. It just dawned on me when I was sitting there this week that I was like, oh, this is the first time we've done this with him, and I'm digging it. He's Dan Wiederer from the Chicago Tribune. I'm Dionne Miller from ABC7. Dan, how did you feel about our first interactions with the Bears' new head coach?
I'm still feeling Matt Eberflus out, right? And I think this is going to be a month's process. Hopefully by the time we get into the second, third week of training camp, I've got a better feel for what makes him tick. I've got a better feel right now of what makes him tick as a coach and what he's looking for from his players. I kind of want, as a reporter, I got to get a feel for what are the questions that light him up, right? What are the questions that get his wheels turning in a way where we get information that can educate folks? Because right now, I think there's this little dance that's going on that's like a, it's like a third grade dance class where you're like, I don't know, it's just awkward right now. Yeah. And Matt Eberflus, I think, is settling in to that new role. Like, this is a new role on a big stage, right? Where you do have to come to the podium after every practice and think of something to say and share information that's relevant in a way, like, I think coaches over time learn that platform is a place for messaging, right? Like, some days you're speaking directly to your players. Some days you're speaking directly to the fans. Some days you're just riffing and getting some things off your chest. And I think Matt Eberflus is still learning that waltz, right? And obviously it's April, it's new coach minicamp. As we've documented on a previous video, everything needs to be kept in the proper context. But I think Matt, out of the gates, is still feeling his way into that role. And I will say that I don't want to say worried, but like, this stage is different, right? This isn't Indianapolis. This is Chicago. The lights are brighter. The reactions on the outside are louder. And I'm very curious to just kind of watch and witness how he handles that as he eases in.
All right. First of all, he needs to wear the white hat on the field every time. Okay. Like, Nagy owned the visor look, and we could pick him out in a heartbeat. Yesterday, photographers were like, now, which one is the head coach and where is he? And it's because he needs to stand out. He's not, his personality that I've observed so far, he's not going to be like really exaggerated and be like very outspoken. And that's not who he is. And so he needs a distinguisher, a white Bears hat. He needs something that's going to set him apart on the field so that we can kind of see him and watch his interactions with his players. I mean, I did appreciate that Eddie Jackson said, look, every coach that is in here right now, and it starts with Eberflus, are down to earth. They just want to know who you are. They just want to get to know you. They're not asking, all about field stuff. We're talking about who we are as people, and they want to connect with us. I genuinely think that's who Matt Eberflus is, but he kept his word. They all know the hits principle, and they all know what the foundation of what this team is going to be about. And they know that right now at voluntary minicamp. And I appreciate that he didn't make a big deal about the guys who weren't here. But when you have a brand new head coach and you decided not to show up for voluntary minicamp just to see what he's about and just get to know him, that speaks to me as someone on the outside. And I can't imagine how he's feeling as he's trying to like navigate. Now, we don't know exactly why those guys didn't show up, but how he's trying to navigate his new role and connecting with everybody. Like, wouldn't you want to make a good impression on the new guy?
Yeah, I mean, among the notable absences were Robert Quinn, Jalen Johnson. Eddie Jackson missed Tuesday, but was back the next 2 days and obviously spoke to us on Thursday and gave us some insight into some of the new tone-setting things that are happening here. Travis Gibson told us early in the week that he's heard the hits principle at least 50 times since he got here in April. And so, Dionne, can you run it through it? Can you pop quiz on the spot? Can you run through the HITS?
Hustle.
There you go.
Intensity.
Yep.
Taking the ball away.
Or taking care of it.
Taking care of the ball. Are there two T's?
Well, it's, you have to branch them off for offense and defense. So the defense needs to take it away. The offense needs to take care of it.
Right. Okay. So there's one T. And then.
Man, you're going to have to stay after class with
it's April 22nd. I don't know it yet. I'll know it.
Situational smarts.
Situational.
So that's what Matt Eberflus' Chicago Bears are going to be built on. He doubled down on that and told us through multiple venues here this week that finish matters, right? Yes. They kept saying finish matters. And that means every rep of every drill, every rep of every practice period that's 7 and 7, 11 and 11, you got to finish. And they're going to be going back on film at Halas Hall and making corrections when somebody doesn't finish, when it's just they ease up at the end of a play, they could have sprinted harder for 3 more yards. That stuff's going to be corrected. My question for Eddie Jackson on Thursday was, how does a coaching staff get those messages across without overcooking them, right? Without overdoing them to the point where, like, if we get to, late July and it's like, all right, coach, we got it. Hits principle, right? Finish matters, right? Like, there's a tightrope you have to walk as a head coach. I'm going to be interested to see how Matt navigates that, because there's a lot of things that he does from that chair, that leader's chair, that are impressive. But there's also a lot of things that it's like, okay, this is going to work with a college team, right? Like now you've got pros. Are you able to connect with these guys on a way that brings out their best on a daily basis and actually resonates with them? That's going to be interesting for me. The other thing, I'll ask you this, because when we sat in that introductory press conference in January, Ryan Poles was emphatic that Matt Eberflus was his guy, right? Like he was asked, hey, how come you didn't expand the coaching search after you got hired? How come you didn't cast the net a little wider and try to figure out who else was out there? And he said, look, I got in the room with Matt Eberflus, just the two of us, and it was clear to me, this is my guy. I cannot pass on this guy. What I'm trying to figure out is why. And I can't, that's not a criticism. I'm just trying to figure out why. Like you got a mid to late 30s first time GM. What was it about Matt Eberflus that was like instant click, right? Like because there's nothing for me yet that's been the instant click, the charisma where you go, that's a can't pass leader. Like this is not Sean McVay standing up there and you're going, holy crap, this guy just oozes energy and charisma and infectious passion for the sport. It comes in a different package. And so I'm still trying to feel out why that connection between those two is as strong as it is.
That is so well stated. And I feel exactly the same way. There isn't this huge, like dynamic personality about him that is so engaging that you were like riveted on a mini camp press conference. And like you said, he is still learning what that role looks like, of course. But gosh, again, he said something about the whys. And I was like, oh my word, we can't have like the same coach speak again and again. Like I want to hand him a book that says, these are the things you can't say. You can't say we're really fired up. You can't say we're figuring out the whys. You just don't say those things. Like you have to change. Some of that has to be different and has to get people's attention. And right now it's not. Now that doesn't mean he's not a wonderful person and maybe a great coach. If he gets them to perform on the field, I mean, he can be whatever he wants to be at that podium as long as they're winning. I think that fans would overlook a lot, but it's hard. Exactly what you said. It's very hard to see how he won the room with a young GM like Ryan Poles, who I think does have that kind of energy. And
he does. Like you get around Ryan and there's an energy that's like it's infectious immediately. To your point about as long as they're winning, people will overlook these things. Well, they're not going to win for a long time. I think we're in agreement that this is a double-digit loss season at the very minimum with the way this roster is constructed right now and where they're positioned in this rebuild. And so he's going to have to endure some of this, what we've talked about, the PTSD, the impatience from the outside that's going to come like shrapnel at him when they lose 3 games in a row in October, and people are going to be losing their minds because they're going to think the wrong hire was made, when it's just like, look, I'm still trying to get my culture, my system, all these things off the ground and away from the gate, right? Like, and let's see where we can go with this. And so that's going to be something that Matt's going to have to deal with as well. I'm not sure either him or Ryan is prepared to take on some of that avalanche of criticism that's going to come from the outside world that isn't of their making, right? Like that it's all related to the fact that the Bears haven't won a playoff game in 11 plus years and counting, that they haven't had 3 consecutive winning seasons since the 80s. That impatience level is something they got to deal with, even though they didn't create it. And we don't know yet how that's going to look and how they're going to evolve with that.
Yeah, you're so right about the outside criticism that swells up. I guarantee you, Matt Eberflus is rolling over this morning and being like, really? People are all up in arms about him dropping you know what I mean? Like, just, it's all new to him to be on the stage with the spotlight as big as it is. And it's only going to get bigger, and he's only going to be pushed harder. And I think by the media even, I mean, sometimes when people ask questions this week about, what's your locker room setup going to look like? And so is lining up next to so-and-so on the offensive line. Is that what you think you're going to do? I mean, I don't know that he anticipated that kind of line of questioning right out of the gate. And so now that was an education for him too. And now he can kind of organize the way he wants to come back with it, because I know that he knows what he's looking for on the field. But this is a big part of it too, is that PR part of it, right? Is that like messaging that he's going to get out to the fan base, to his players who are listening, and through the media to put it out there. And I think we're going to learn quickly too, Dan, because this time we'll get to get in the locker room. This season we're going to get to see what the dynamics are in there again, which I am anxious for.
Is it true? I still feel like I'm living a dream that we're going to be able to go back in that locker room and actually sit down at a stall with a guy and have a conversation. And
you know what's amazing is that we did it for baseball on opening day. And as soon as we walk in, Jason Hayward says, he's like, well, welcome back, guys. And I was like, oh, you're right. We haven't been back in here. And it felt like we were never gone.
Normal.
I mean, it felt very, very normal. And instantly that connection, their
Well,
response to questions is so much greater. And it allows us to bring the fans closer than that like they want to be. And that's what I'm really excited about, especially for a team that has so many new faces. And we're going to get to feel what that energy is.
That was what I was going to say, is Jason Hayward can say welcome back because he knows you guys from the last time you were in the locker room. By the time we get back into the locker room at Halas Hall, it's going to be like, these guys are going to look at us like, who the hell are these people, right? Like there's going to be like 3 guys that were actually in that locker room the last time that locker room was open.
Eddie Jackson. Let's help each other.
Roquan.
Eddie Jackson, Cody Whitehair.
Roquan Smith.
Yeah, Roquan.
I mean, we're running out. DeAndre Houston Carson.
Yeah.
Patrick Scales.
Patrick Scales.
I can't remember when Cairo's return came, but I don't remember if that was.
Cairo was there when
in a locker room.
John Fox wasn't Cairo there.
Yeah, but that's like and then he left. I mean, to your point, we can't get to 10 really quickly of guys that we spent time with in the locker room, and it's pretty crazy. I think just the last thing on Flus is just trying to learn how his patience level is going to be. I thought it was interesting this week to hear him talk about how he was moving around really for the first time in his coaching career, going to an offensive period, switching over, going to look at the defense, coming back to look at the offense. I think Matt Nagy in his first year head coach trusted Vic Fangio so much as the defensive coordinator. I knew he had so much work to do with his own offense that he was very tunnel visioned, right? I got to work with Mitch. I got to work with this offense. And I don't know. And he had the luxury. Look, Vic Fangio put together the best defense in the league that season and gave Matt this luxury. But then Vic left and Matt didn't quite know how to do it, work those controls the way he needed to. And so I think it's going to be interesting to see how Eberflus figures that out as a defensive minded coach, trying to figure out how do you connect with an offense? How do you oversee an offense? How do you work with Luke Getsy to put things in? And I talked to Brandon Staley at the owners meetings last month about being a defensive minded coach and having to forge a connection with a young quarterback, right? Like he's doing it with Justin Herbert out in LA. Same thing is going to happen here for Matt Eberflus and Justin Fields. And there's just a part of your week that you've got to carve out to build a relationship with the quarterback. So we'll see how he handles that as well.
Yeah, I appreciate that he's doing that, though, trying to connect all across the board. He's certainly, I know he's hired a defensive coordinator that he believes in, but already hearing Eddie Jackson say that it's simpler and things are easier to understand about the way they want to run things defensively, he's going to win a lot of guys that way if he's setting them up for success. And I think that's important, but I do think it's vital that Flus have a solid relationship with Justin Fields, with the offensive side of the ball. And he shows that he's engaged with what they're doing. I think that's going to help a lot with this transition. That's going to be all season long, Dan, season long.
Listen, there's been some conversation in that media room from people that have covered this team for a long time about how 2022 at this stage is setting up to be a grind. In terms of trying to find interesting, energizing, entertaining storylines in a team that is really in a tedious portion of the reboot phase, and we'll see if they can accelerate that and get us closer to some interesting content.
we are like it's essentially draft week. So, it is draft week. And that's going to help. It's going to help a lot. And it's going to show us, we'll get to know Ryan Poles a little bit too, based on the selections that he makes and how he operates things. Kind of excited. I can't believe it's draft time already though, Dan. The year is flying by.
Well, it is. Now. I mean, the NBA playoffs are going on. Baseball's going on. You got to be at the United Center for Bulls Bucks this weekend. This is a big series going on. Huge. There's a lot happening. So we're in the thick of it. But obviously, we got a long time before Bears start doing things that are meaningful on the field. But hey, we've squeezed 2 videos and a ton of content out of 3 days of minicamp.
Out of 3 days of minicamp. Just think what we'll do when it's mandatory. This is voluntary.
Absolutely. That's Dionne. I'm Dan. Thanks for joining us. Like, subscribe, share this with your friends, and we'll continue to bring it to you.
Bye, guys.